Right. Good evening, everyone. So we have a special guest today, Tom Beattie, and with Tom, we will focus on Ozan Kabak's performance, and also we will talk about Liverpool's recent games. Tom, welcome to the Football Biz.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really happy to be here and obviously discussing quite a pertinent time in Liverpool's history in this season. So hopefully, should be a good one.
Fantastic. Right. Tom, before we start, would you like to just briefly introduce yourself? And I'm going to press on with the questions afterwards.
Yeah, so I'm a boyhood Liverpool supporter, a native of the city, and I've loved Liverpool Football Club my whole life. But yeah, I started my journalism career actually at the Liverpool Echo, sort of on a placement. And I've sort of gone on from there. I've featured on the Red Men TV, for example. And I work up in the north of England, in North Cumbria, as a reporter. But my real love still is Liverpool Football Club. And so I'm delighted to be on here with you, being able to indulge in one of my true loves, really. But yeah, so yeah, should be a good show.
Perfect. Right. Just to let you know, guys, Tom's all social media platforms will be in the descriptions, including, obviously, as you can see, his Twitter address there as well. So please feel free to follow him and do read the descriptions. And Tom also does GOAT podcasts. So we will put the GOAT podcast address and also the podcast Twitter address there as well. Okay. So Tom, just a general question, as you are not with your, please, if you could answer, with your supporter identity as opposed to a journalist one.
Yeah.
What was your feeling when you heard about 20 years old, a Turkish defender, obviously signed to Liverpool? What was your first reaction?
I was absolutely delighted because I think since early on in the season, we've had a bit of a crisis really at Liverpool in terms of injuries, and particularly at centre-back, unfortunately. We lost, I think, probably our talisman at the back, really, Virgil van Dijk. Within a couple of weeks after that game, we lost Joe Gomez, who is as important, really, in that partnership. And we've really struggled to keep the likes of Joel Matip fit, really, over the course of the season. And he was unfortunately ruled out for the rest of the season, at the back end of January as well. So I think the case was that we had to find a replacement, really. I was never too comfortable with playing midfielders at the back. I really applaud the performances the likes of Fabinho and Henderson have been able to put in the intervening months, I think, since the injury to the likes of Van Dijk. But I always felt it's such a specialist position that we needed to sign a specialist centre-back to go there. And luckily, we brought in Kabak. He's somebody who I'd heard about before. I think we were tracking him last summer, particularly when Dejan Lovren was moved on. Yeah. I think we were under a bit of a strict budget, really, in the summer. And I think a decision must have been made at one stage to either buy another centre-back or buy a backup left-back. As it was, we went with Tsimikas, who hasn't featured much. And perhaps in hindsight, the right decision would have been made to invest in another centre-back. But obviously, hindsight is a fabulous thing. And so, yeah, we were left in January with having to make a big decision, really. And thankfully, we did sign a centre-back. We signed two. And I think Kabak was the one who really stood out for the Liverpool supporters. And, football is about optimism. It's about hoping that your team can go on and do well. And I think for every Liverpool fan, it was a real relief, to be honest, that we'd signed another centre-back.
Great. So also, when Ozan featured in his first game, he had barely a training, and he had to went into team straight away because of, as you mentioned, number of injuries in defense department. So and he had some shaky games, like one I remember, a critical mistake which ended up with the goal. So would you say, comparing the other players like Keita or Fabinho, because they start playing for club like in first like 10, 15 minutes and gradually increase that time. But Ozan couldn't have this luxury due to the fact that there were a high number of injured players. What would you comment on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The big word with Jurgen Klopp teams that's been used throughout the years at Dortmund and now at Liverpool is intensity. And for a lot of players who first come to Liverpool, it's a struggle to get into the team and get into the rhythm of that intensity. So you look at examples like Andy Robertson, who's playing next to Kabak in defence. You look at Fabinho just in front. Oxlade-Chamberlain is probably another good example as well. They didn't feature much, to be honest, in the first 3 or 4 months of their time at Anfield. And there's always been that aspect with Klopp that he likes to bed in a player. He likes to make sure that they know what they're there to do. And they also know, more importantly, the intensity of the game at Liverpool. Particularly for attackers, it's pressing from the front. For defenders, more so, it's that high line, which is so important to Liverpool with the 2 full-backs either side. And for a young player to come in, like you say, Kabak, straight into the starting lineup 2 days after he signed for Liverpool, to go in at Leicester, which is obviously a difficult game away from home. It was always going to be hard. Liverpool, I think, struggled in that game a little bit, the final 20 minutes. And obviously, the next few games, I think, at home, we went on one of our worst runs, I think, since the 1930s, I believe. So, yeah, it's been a difficult period for any young player to come in. But I think the most important thing is that the past couple of games have been really promising for Liverpool, and particularly Ozan Kabak as well. There's been a real change, I think, in the way Liverpool have been playing. It's been quite subtle, but I think that it has been noticeable since the return of Fabinho in midfield. I think, some order has been restored to Liverpool's performances. And, okay, they haven't been, as intense. They haven't been as sort of exciting going forward. But I think at the back, the most important thing is that Liverpool have been really tight as a unit. And for 2 young centre-backs in the form of Nat Phillips and obviously Kabak, to be playing the way they are, I think every Liverpool fan at the moment is really impressed. And I think we're just really hoping now for the next 9 games in the Premier League. And obviously in Europe, we'll see how far we can get. I think we're really intrigued to see how that partnership is going to develop as well.
Yeah, I mean, especially when Fabinho, as you mentioned, came into the picture, I think Ozan has improved his game because it's such an important position for centre backs. Your holding midfielder and how your holding midfielder acts when necessary. It gets in the middle of your two centre backs, or it creates that bridge in between the midfield or attacking players and the defenders. So definitely we did notice that. Also, when he started, as you said, Jordan Henderson was his partner, whose native position is midfield, and I think that was another disadvantage for Ozan as well. That's just my opinion, of course, but it was obvious to see. So he did have really good games. Let's talk about the positive. But before that, I'm just going to read out his stats. Obviously, it's only 5 games, but last game was very promising. Especially, I did see a couple of long balls from him, really. And he had one good throw ball as well, which is featured in Liverpool's short video about Ozan's performance, which I truly enjoyed. And he was man of the match in the last game, and Alan Shearer picked him in his 11th of the week, or first 11 of the week, however you call it. So far he had also on the plus side 89.2% of passing accuracy, which I find it really good for 20 years old player. Obviously 5 goals and conceded 6 goals and 2 clean sheets. So, as you said, the 2 clean sheets, but it didn't have, a really good start due to the high number of injured players. Let's talk about on the positive a bit more because I think it's an improving curve. Ozan's form. So his his Champions League performance and also his last Wolves game performance. How would you analyze those two performances?
I think it's so promising. I really do. I think every Liverpool fan now was so excited to see what's going to come from Kabak. In the 2 legs against Leipzig, I thought he was excellent. I think particularly the second leg, I thought he was really commanding at the back. You can see he's really beginning to bed in. He didn't put a foot wrong, and I think that he deserves a lot of applause at that age to come in. Particularly for a young centre-back, people often speak of that position as being a place in the team where you can't really go in as a young player. It's very difficult to go in and make your mark, and I was really impressed that he did stand out in those games. But I think the Wolves game is the one that stands out for me particularly. It was a 10 out of 10 performance, really. And I think we really did benefit. We touched upon Fabinho before. I think we joked off air about Fabinho in Liverpool. He's referred to as the lighthouse, which I think is basically in reference to him being able to bring the game forward for the attacking players, but also, most importantly, for Kabak. He's able to help him at the back as well. And I think we were starting to see real promise there in that game. I think for every Liverpool fan now, we're just really excited to see how it's going to develop. I thought in the game against Wolves, like you said, he's starting to bring other things to his game. I think it's probably a bit of a relief for him, really, that, you know, he's got a specialist centre-back next to him. I felt Fabinho when he played there, and I really applaud Fabinho and Henderson for the efforts that they made over the past couple of months to play at centre-back, and mostly it went well. You know, we went on a bit of a barren run at one stage, but I think mostly, you know, the efforts that they went to during that stage won't be forgotten. But I think that to have a specialist centre-back next to him now, I think they're only going to improve together. And, you know, I think a couple of pundits have spoken in midweek, really, haven't they, about sort of, you know, having 2 young centre-backs there. They're almost learning on the job a little bit, but I think they're covering for each other really well. Yeah. And I thought that was really pleasing to see as well. So, yeah, onwards and upwards, I think, for Liverpool. Hopefully those next 9 games, I think, as a chunk of games, I think we've got to look at now and just hope that we get enough points on the board for top 4. Has to be the aim now. And we just hope that we perform a bit of a miracle in Europe, which, as we know with Liverpool, we can never write them off. So I think, fingers crossed, I think for all Liverpool fans now, that centre-back partnership is going to pay dividends for us now.
So let's talk about his contract a bit. So because he's on loan now in Liverpool with an option of being permanent team member, option of purchase. And is that how is you reckon Liverpool is going to sign him? Will use that option, or it has a promising start. I mean, yes, he did have some mistakes, but we are talking about 20 years old player, regardless of his previous experience. He did have some mistakes when he played for Galatasaray, but he was 18 years old then, and he was playing in Champions League. So he's a so odd example, isn't it? 20 years old, it's such a experience in European football. So what is your opinion or your feeling in terms of him being, permanent player of Liverpool?
I'm pretty convinced. I think after the past 3 examples that we've given, the Kabak, I think, will be signed. I think that it's a no-brainer, really. For a 20-year-old to have that level of experience, I think, particularly in European competition, which is where Liverpool ultimately want to be, I think it's a no-brainer. I think that, Liverpool, we often go for that profile of player, a young player who we can develop. We never really go for the ready-made superstar. And I think it absolutely fits in with what Michael Edwards often looks for in a player. I think The loan move, I think, was more to do with the financial constraints that the club were under as a result of COVID. But I think Kabak is certainly a player that we've been tracking for a long time. And his name has been mentioned, I think, before he went to Schalke as a possible option for Liverpool. So I think if he continues in his current form, I've got no doubt that, it seems like a bit of a bargain deal, really, for the summer. £18 million for another option at centre-back. Obviously, Joel Matip, I think what you'd imagine, because of his injury problems, would possibly be the man to become fourth choice, and Kabak potentially would be fighting for his place alongside Van Dijk with Joe Gomez. So I think there's a lot of promise there, and I'm hoping that we do get a deal over the line for him, because the past couple of games, it's not easy to come into a Liverpool side and impress, and I think he's done that. So I'm really impressed, and I think that hopefully we can get a deal done for him in the summer.
Well, great to hear, dear Tom. Just to let you know, Ozan Kabak's kind of hero player, or the player he adored, was Virgil van Dijk, and I think it would be dreams come true for him if he plays next to Virgil van Dijk. But in my opinion, from the technical point of view, they will be a great partner, because one has pace. Virgil. Let's not start talking about Virgil van Dijk, because we need at least 3 to 4 hours interview. But I mean, from emotional point as well, that would be such a motivation for Ozan to stay in the team. Last question. We did talk about Ozan, but how you see Liverpool in next 9 games? If you can briefly comment us, because Fabinho is now obviously in the team, and with Fabinho being there, I think your attacking players slightly very eased off in terms of they can obviously Jurgen Klopp's mentality always gegenpress, press further up, be compact, and push the center backs forward, and make it difficult for the opponents. But after this shaky, let's say, isn't it, comparing the last year's performance after this shaky year, how do you think, or what is do you think Premier League is totally a dream now, because Man City's the point difference with Man City, and what about Europe? Could you just briefly comment us Liverpool's general performance before we finish?
Well, I think for most Liverpool fans now, the target for us is to get back into the top 4, to get Champions League football for next year. I think we've got one eye now on Europe. It's always the top table for Liverpool, the Champions League. And I think the number 1, we've got to get back in there for next year. And I think secondly, some of us are hoping at least that we can surprise a few people. And we can maybe pull off a bit of a miracle and be able to go further than I think most people are thinking we will. But I think in terms of the Premier League, we've got 9 big games to come now, I think, towards the back end of the season. Like you say, Fabinho back in the midfield is going to make a big difference, I think, for Liverpool. And having that solid centre-back partnership, so we can push the full-backs up back again, I think is going to be so important for Liverpool. We have lacked that intensity during the January-February period. There is a bit of precedent there with seasons gone by. Think of 2017, 2018, for example. 2016, 2017, it was very similar for Jurgen Klopp teams to struggle in that period. And I think with injuries on top, it's kind of been a bit of a killer really for the title charge this year. But I do believe in the next 9 games that Liverpool can surprise a few people. And we put runs together before, and I do think that most Liverpool fans now are hoping that we were able to go on a bit of a run. We've been hoping all season that we could, but there was just a bit of promise there against a very good Wolves team. I think we quelled their attack really well. We looked very mature at the back, which I think for a young centre-back pairing was great to see. And I think the way that Fabinho commanded that midfield really excited the Liverpool fans. And we're just hoping over 9 games now that we can put enough points together to get back into the top four, and in Europe pull off a bit of a miracle. To be honest, I think that's what most Liverpool fans are hoping for now.
Well, Tom, thank you ever so much for being with us and sharing your valuable opinion on Ozan Kabak and also on Liverpool. We do have quite a few Liverpool supporters in Turkey as well, as Liverpool is an international team, is a very big team. Once again, thank you very much. And guys, please, pleasure, always pleasure. Once again, guys, please, if you like the interview, give us a like, do subscribe on the channel, and in descriptions once again we have Football Biz all social platforms there, my Telegram, my Twitter account, and also my Clubhouse account is in the description. But more importantly, our valuable guest Tom's Twitter address and also the podcast address will be there. Thank you ever so much, and I'm sure we will see each other again. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers.